Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan, an open source researcher who investigates areas of science that are generally very old, very new, or very esoteric. In this video, we're going to take a look at the open source work of Malcolm Bendall and break down his newly announced invention, the Plasmoid Thunderstorm Generator, which is really a quite astounding new piece of technology. It reduces carbon waste to practically zero and can double fuel efficiency in any existing engine. So that sounds like a pretty wild claim, but I've seen enough evidence to start shouting about it, and we need to start looking at the work of Malcolm Bendall. So quickly, to deal with the elephant in the room for many people, undeniably, who is Malcolm Bendall? Is he legitimate? And the reason I want to deal with this now is that, like many inventors that have worked on new power systems that threaten the status quo, Malcolm's been highly suppressed and attacked, both in person and online, over this and over the years. So after Randall Carlson first brought up his work on the Joe Rogan podcast last year, there was a huge backlash of commenters saying that Malcolm Bendall was a scammer and Randall Carlson had been duped and Joe had fallen for it too. And I want to be clear that from my own research into this topic, these rumors are nothing but a load of crap, and they seem to have been intentionally spread. If you spend 15 minutes doing your own research, you can find Malcolm's rebuttal and evidence for his side of the story, and you can check it out at strikefoundation.earth. And frankly, even if this stuff was true, it just doesn't matter. Just look at the technology, look at what it's doing, look at the evidence, try it out, find more evidence. Like, it's clear that over and over again, it's beginning to annoy me. There is suppression of any new ideas around this technology, that it becomes untouchable by institutional science. And I think we're all a little bit sick of that. So I urge you to do your own research on that topic. Not going to go further into it, but I thought I'd better just put it out there before I get silly comments telling me, Bendall is suspect. He's not. His work's very interesting, and he's been quite generous in open sourcing quite a lot of his research to us, so tired of that. But moving on to the invention itself, the Thunderstorm Generator, using plasmoid technology. Kind of new terminology coming at us there, but it's actually been around for a while, and you can look into Malcolm's sources on plasmoids and others who have studied them, including Stanley Mayer's system as well. At least what Malcolm seems to be privy to, but you can check out, he's got some lectures up, and I'll link to all of that in the description. So this is only phase 1 of Malcolm's new technology. His eventual goal is to drill into at least a 2-kilometer tall granite mountain to construct a system very similar to Nikola Tesla's world power plant plans, but using argon gas and a few different things there. And again, you can find out more about that in Bendall's lecture series and see him talking about it himself. And of course, the idea here is to be able to provide an unlimited source of clean energy that can be accessed from anywhere in the world. And this is using the Schumann cavity surrounding the atmosphere around Earth. And of course, I really can't speak much to this, but it sounds like something brilliant to look into, and certainly Nikola Tesla was talking about very, very similar concepts, if not the same, because his work is quite esoteric, and there is not a lot on his world power plant ideas that we have access to, although more is coming out. But in the meantime, this Thunderstorm Generator is a transition technology that Malcolm's already designed, trialed himself on every type of standard engine imaginable, and he's now publicly released the designs and the notes for it. So I was even lucky enough to catch a live stream of it being demonstrated to the public yesterday, and a number of old hands from Tesla Tech, other legitimate researchers were physically present to witness it in action, and several independents were brought in to strip it apart and help fit the unit to a new generator before the conference. So a lot of confirmations there, other people checking it out who haven't necessarily been related to Malcolm Bendall in the past or even know of his work. So it's an impressively simple concept, and by all accounts so far it works just as Malcolm says it does. So I call it a transition technology because it's something we can immediately use. Something that doesn't require learning really any new physics, something any good DIY engineer can probably rig up themselves tomorrow with the information already available. And the Thunderstorm Generator is just a modification to our already existing combustion engines. So essentially it's a waste energy harvesting unit that's hooked up to the exhaust manifold of any existing fuel engine. So Malcolm has built working prototypes for cars, and I'll just flick through a few images from him here, and generators, both petrol ones and diesel ones, gas generators, industrial generators, jet turbine. I believe this is a charcoal burning unit that he's just rigged up to show how this could work on industrial chimneys and things like that. And, you know, it can even potentially be used for nuclear smokestacks and stuff like this in the future. He seems to say it can be scaled, you know, as far up as we want or as small as we want. And it doubles fuel efficiency and turns the exhaust output into almost completely pure, clean air. So let me repeat that. It turns the exhaust output into oxygen and doubles our runtime on a tank of fuel. So now, considering my mother's being told she needs to turn down her heater for a few more degrees this winter, and she's still paying double her usual power and fuel bill currently, and considering we're globally spending trillions on supposedly carbon-reducing initiatives that barely ever work or really address the issue properly, kind of pisses me off that there's no media coverage at all on this invention, that people aren't taking it seriously at all, or it's not, most people don't know about it. So it almost makes you think that the real solutions aren't really wanted at all, and this is all maybe a big scam, but I digress. Let's look at how this thing works. So I haven't tried building it myself yet, but I certainly will be soon. And Malcolm also mentions that we should see DIY conversion kits manufactured by his associates within a year or so. So Malcolm's been kind enough to open source all of his notes and his presentations, hence why you can see I'm using the slides from his lectures to demonstrate. So first we take any existing combustion engine, so it's a generator in this example, but it could be a car or a truck or a plane, an industrial chimney or an appropriate coal or wood burner, as we've discussed. And then we need to construct the three parts of the Thunderstorm generator that we can see here. And they'll be attached to, as you can see, the input of the carburetor and the output of the exhaust manifold here. So first module is the UV air filter, and this essentially just appears to be a cylinder container with a UV light bulb in it. There's an air inlet at the top, and the UV bulb is positioned centrally, and Malcolm's notes state that 100 nanometer wavelength UV light bulb should be used because this is the same frequency as the light emitted by the imploding plasmoids, which are generated in the next module. So the UV air filter pre-treats and ionizes the air before it enters the plasmoid generation chamber. And the air is pulled through the whole system and into the carburetor on each vacuum pulse of the engine's pistons. So no additional electronics are needed to make the unit function. So there's no like additional vacuum or anything. It's just using the vacuum of the engine's pistons. So this is, it's just a pre-ionizing air filter to pre-treat the air before we pull it into the next stage of the system. So when the air is vacuumed by the engine through the UV filter, it's pulled into the next module or chamber, which is the Plasmoid Generator that we see here. And again, you can find all of these schematics and many more kind of different versions of it and more details of it in the links that I'll provide in the description from Malcolm himself. So I'm just taking a few of the slides here to give an overview of the invention, but there's a lot more on it if you want to go ahead and try and build one of these. So this is a very curious part of the process indeed. So from what I can understand from the available plans, the air is distributed into the water chamber via a porous air stone, which produces microbubbles. So just a ceramic or steel type bubbler for like a fish tank or something. One that ideally should produce very small bubbles around 0.5 micron, was the number that I picked up during yesterday's live stream. And so this air zone sits at the bottom of the cone here, at the inlet. And this is what our inlet ionized air passes through. And on the vacuum pulses from the engine, these micro bubbles are sucked up through some steel wool contained between two steel mesh screens, which contain it. So steel wool here and mesh screens containing it there. And so this stainless steel filter that the micro bubbles pass through apparently acts as a catalyst to atomize and vaporize this bubbly ionized water. And this is all pulled up as a vapor and gas to the top of the chamber during the vacuum phase of the engine. So Malcolm says that we need micro bubbles, smaller than we can see, because the bubbles need to be symmetrical so that they'll collapse symmetrically in the next step. He mentions that around 7,000 micro bubbles are produced in each vacuum phase, a couple of times there as well. And so, of course, all of this is happening really quickly each time the pistons of the engine pull air in through the carburetor. But when the pistons reverse, the vacuum is released, and instead pressure is created within the plasmoid generation chamber. So this is where things again get pretty weird, and we have to ignore a lot of abstract science of the past and just kind of take it at face value, and acknowledge it works, and we can find out more about it in the future. And Malcolm explains that during the pressure phase of the engine, the micro bubbles are forced to collapse into themselves or implode, as we can see here. So a perfect sphere collapsing into a perfect infinity sign or figure eight, the mighty plasmoid itself. And he explains that we're essentially moving the water or the bubbles from a liquid phase to a gas state, and then through to a plasma stage, simply by structuring how the ionized bubbles implode when they're put under pressure. And the collapse of the asymmetrical microbubbles forms a toroidal magnetic field, which then contains the plasma in the form of the final plasmoid. So the plasmoid's a small, self-contained toroid of plasma, and an atomic battery, essentially, at this point, as Malcolm describes it. And the bubble pops, and the plasmoid is left. And so we can see the plasmoids immediately increase in size by drawing in and converting the available water vapor around them. And the molecular, and even according to Malcolm, the atomic bonds are disassociated as the vapor passes through the toroid, splitting the water first into hydrogen and oxygen, and then down into their component parts, which are used to grow the size of the plasmoids from 10 to the power of minus 12 microns to 100 microns in size, as he shows here in this graphic. And from here, the plasmoids are vacuumed into the last module of the system, which is the Thunderstorm Generator. And there's, again, various schematics and images you can see for this if you want to go check out Malcolm's presentation that I linked to. And again, this is a really cool idea. Vortexes are very cool. They're a lot of fun. So, like most scientists who come up with anything revolutionary, Malcolm apparently came up with this idea from just observing storms and hurricanes with a few divine visions thrown in. And the concept of the thunderstorm generator is actually based on the Vajra, which is the fabled lightning bolt throwing weapon of Lord Indra, gifted to him to save the earth from demonic forces in the Vedic scriptures. And Zeus, the Greek god of lightning, is also depicted holding a weapon, a very similar design. And the Ark of the Covenant is also has a similar design there. So similarly, the plasmoid charging chamber is based on Malcolm's study of Solomon's molten sea. So again, a lot of interesting influences there, a lot of looking at history and taking it a bit more serious than most people. Anyway, the cold, moist, ionized plasmoid vapors, which have been independently verified to be at a temperature of around negative 86.3 as they exit the plasmoid generation chamber. So they're pulled into that's crazy, they're pulled into the thunderstorm generator. And on the other end of the thunderstorm generator, the hot exhaust gases are introduced at an angle, spinning them anti-clockwise into the sphere at the head of the unit. And the outside temperature of the sphere and the exhaust gases within the chamber can get to temperatures around 700 to 1,000 degrees, even though they're only 300 degrees when they're exiting the engine. And the opposing vortexes of hot carbon exhaust gases and the cold water vapor plasma dense with plasmoids collide. And just like in a real thunderstorm, where slight differences in temperature between the air and the water can cause a hurricane, an incredible vortex of natural power, in the thunderstorm generator, the opposing vortexes of hot exhaust gas and cold plasmoid vapor seem to do much the same thing. So, as Malcolm explains it, the carbon atoms from the exhaust collide and merge with the dissociated protons and electrons from the hydrogen atom, and this produces oxygen and hydrogen as a result. Again, crazy claim here, but apparently it's doing this. No one's coming up with any other different explanations here so far, and it works. The cold hydrogens then vacuum through the central compressed vortex back into the carburetor as fuel, and the warm oxygen is finally released through the exhaust. And Malcolm's released the gas analysis of the exhaust in his notes, and also he's showed it on the live stream and to the physical crowd during yesterday's demonstration. You can see it here, and the results yesterday were much the same, and it really is just pumping out clean, breathable air from all accounts and measurements we've seen so far. So you can put your nose up to the exhaust, take a deep breath, and not smell anything, no fumes. So that's the carbon emissions issue solved, at least, you know, as a transition technology. Seemingly done. Here it is. So maybe we could sink a few billion of the trillions spent on just, you know, dilly-dallying around with fake solutions and hidden agendas, on exploring this real and present solution that we seemingly have here. Even if it's just an exploration, you know, obviously it needs to be replicated and tried out and the gases further analyzed, but, you know, come on. Like, we're investing so much into solutions that are clearly not as promising as this. So, yeah, I doubt they are going to do this. So if you're an engineer or, you know, you're good at kind of whacking together home inventions, try and replicate this. I'd love to see it, you know, let me know. I've provided all the links to Malcolm's lectures, videos of the thing running, schematics for the modules down in the description. I think you can still access that live stream, just see it afterwards and, you know, see it working, see other people looking at it. There's a few other things that I want to talk about regarding Malcolm Bendall's work, including the Bendall turbine and the plasmoid unification model, which I hope to cover in future videos. So subscribe and like the video and comment if you're interested to see more about this. I've been looking at this for a long time and trying to figure this out, so it's great that he's releasing more on this now and we can start to look at it. And yeah, hey, if you're in Victoria, Australia, and you want to give me a hand to try and build one, hit me up. I've got a car we can try it on, and I believe I can probably build the generator. But I'm not a great mechanic, and I probably need some help recasting the exhaust manifold to fit, and just fiddling around with the engine at the end to get it fine-tuned and running efficiently. You know, like whenever you're adding anything to an engine, there's always those kind of specific tuning issues with that engine and the modification you've added. So I'd love some help with that stuff if anyone's interested. And, you know, don't have to do it immediately, but otherwise I'm probably going to have a crack at it myself later. But if you give it a shot yourself, wherever you are, let me know, because I'd just love to see more people trying this out and see some more data built around this, because it's really important. And, you know, last of all, with all the misinformation, like blatant misinformation going on around Malcolm, I encourage everyone to reach out to him, support his work, you know, show him that we're taking this seriously, and we really appreciate anyone who's trying to open source work in this area. He's open sourcing a lot, and he's backing up his claims, which is really rare, and it's pretty generous of him. And it's taken great personal risk and sacrifice him to do this, seemingly. So instead of us ruminating over whether, you know, Nikola Tesla or Stanley Mayer were suppressed in the past, you know, let's acknowledge that Malcolm Bendall's being suppressed right now. And we should probably do all we can to share his work pretty widely so that it can be verified and explored more deeply, and ultimately, you know, used and implemented as a transition technology to solve our immediate energy crisis, while we continue to work on new technology, whether Malcolm's or the others that are being looked into at the moment. So that's all for today. Like I say, hopefully we'll dive into more Malcolm's stuff in the future. It's really interesting. Looking forward to seeing more from him. Looking forward to, you know, see a kit set on the market maybe, and also looking forward to try and, just barely even need to reverse engineer this. A lot of the schematics are there, most of the plans, so it'll just take a little bit of fiddling to go and create this at home. So let's do it. See ya.